Virtual China-Africa Governance Capacity Building Program took place recently. It's quite a title. It's essentially an initiative aimed at exchanging ideas between African countries and China. This year's focus was, without surprise, the COVID-19 pandemic. In an article for the Sunday Independent, public policy specialist Dr. TK Pooe suggests that there is desperate need for a new conceptualization of the role of state, especially government and the public sector. He goes on to say that political deployments need to be re-evaluated as well. Let's get more on the article. Always a pleasure to join Dr. TK to the show here on Upfront, joining us via Skype. Hello to you, TK. Always good to speak to you. Let's talk a little bit about the fact we're almost in the eye of the storm regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. And now, and I'm sure you have an opinion on this, a new health MEC in Gauteng, no medical qualifications, has been deployed. How much of a problem is this going to be?
No, thanks for having me. I think the bigger problem is not so much that he's being deployed. The bigger issue for me is what type of system and institution is he inheriting. And as you rightly say, we're heading into what's going to be quite a painful period for many people, and it's going to be quite challenging for government. And the key question, which I think my article is also trying to raise, is, we always keep throwing people at problems, but we never ask, do the institutions that these people are heading, whether are they qualified to head them, and two, are the institutions actually ready to handle something like COVID? Because one thing we cannot no longer deny is that COVID has highlighted strategic weaknesses within the South African state, especially the public sector.
And we turn to leaders to guide us through this, don't we? And in the article, you also allude to the fact, in fact, you don't allude, you're very clear, that there needs to be standards to enter politics and parliaments. Many would have thought there were standards to get into politics and parliament, but it seems that might not be the case.
Oh, no, what you really just need is you need to hit a threshold within a political party. You need to have a certain critical mass of people that believe in you. Whether these people believe in you for their own reasons or whether they actually believe you've got the skill, that's really quite irrelevant. And once a party vets you into this process, you now become a parliamentarian. And depending whether you're on the governing party side or you're part of the opposition party, you will get a very good salary and a position. And I think that's the key problem. And this is not actually what tends to happen in countries that have really dealt well with COVID. And as you earlier alluded to, if you look at the Chinese example, it's not enough for the political party to believe in you. You as a politician need to come and say, this is my track record of what I've done when I've headed institutions. And this track record should allow me to go up. And we have no such thing in South Africa.
How much of an issue do you think the political deployments, TK, are for the reason of some of the problems we're seeing in the country?
I think the front and center, because if you look at it in two ways. One, when you send somebody there, even if they say they've got good intentions and they want to do well, they're going to find an institution which is very overbearing and sometimes which is wrongly constructed. And now because they don't have the relevant skills to actually deconstruct institution to actually serve people, they get into the quagmire of where for the next 4 years they're going to be trying to put their ideas into it, forgetting the fact that, listen, the next 5 years, well, the next 4 years, they're actually going to have to go for re-election again. So for me, the bigger issue is not who you put there, because I think we've dealt with this enough in South Africa that we know that we're not sending the right people into the right office. What we need to ask is to say, if the institution is very well capacitated and has got a good track record, it'll by its very nature require somebody who's of that ilk. And unfortunately, we don't have it in that way. We both don't have the right people. We don't have the right institutions in place.
We need to look at South Africa and its place in Africa, and then Africa, TK. How, in the midst of COVID-19, everything has changed. You and I can't even be in the same building as a result of it. How does South Africa, and perhaps broadly the continent, go on to ensure that their goal of becoming a global leader when this pandemic is over is still on track? Is it a new normal we have to survive, or can Africa and South Africa thrive off the back of this, do you think?
I like the way you pose it. We have to just be very honest. This is going to live with us for the longest time. There's no cure in sight. In the long term, I'm talking the next 2 to 3 years. None of us can say today, conclusively that the cure is coming. So we just need to ask ourselves, what will the economy need to look like? Well, look, we're still going to need food. Is our agricultural sector up to standard? Does government, have they done enough research and development into the type of foods the rest of the continent and the world is ready to export? And I think we haven't done enough into that. In terms of our financial services sector, in as much as, look, things are not great at the moment, we have to give our financial services sector some credit that they've done very well in the fact that you and I can still bank from home. We can still do a lot lot of our insurance work, why aren't we able to go to these private sector institutions and say, listen, how is it that when it comes to ICT and these AIs, as your previous guests have said, how is it that you are able to master it and actually make a profit from it? How can we put this into the public sector so that, we can get rid of the fat which is there? Because sometimes we really have institutions where people lack imagination, and people's lack of imagination is costing us from actually creating a new type of economy. And I always say this, if South Africa is not doing well, the Southern African continent is not doing well. And if the Southern African continent is doing well, the rest of the continent is also going to suffer.
I'd like your thoughts before I let you go. I'm not sure if you were with us. We played a soundbite from Blade Nzimande. He was speaking during the SACP's 99th anniversary celebrations, and he used a word, TK. I'd like to just throw the word to you. You tell me what you make of this word. Blade Nzimande is saying COVID-preneurs. What do you make of that?
Look, I think it's a perennial thing. If you're surprised that we have corruption now, which part of South Africa have you been living in? We've had corruption for the longest time, and I think as citizens, people are tired of hearing about it. It almost seems as though our politicians are surprised that we have corruption, but the rest of us as citizens know we have corruption if you visit different institutions in government. What we're looking for, and the key issue is leadership. Leadership doesn't tell us what the problem is. Leadership sorts out the problem. And unfortunately, and this is where maybe I take a different turn for many people, I really doubt we have leaders in South Africa. We have people who are in good political positions. They happen to occupy ministries and are mayors, but none of those people are leaders because they're telling us the same problems you and I see. My understanding of a leader is that you sort the problem out and you bring society along with you on that. And until we see such type of people, what we're going to get politicians that are surprised that South Africa is not working, and the rest of us know that that's the case.
Let's go back a couple of months. Final question to you, TK. I can speak to you all day, but I want to leave this as my final question to you. At the start of lockdown, I'm sure you're aware of what happens on Twitter. There was a hashtag saying, "We are led." Are we still being led?
They're correct, and if you follow the logic, we're being led. The bigger question is, where are we being led to? And I think that's the fear at the moment. And look, for people that have been able to maybe survive, and I hate to use the word survive COVID, people are losing their jobs, they're losing their livelihoods. And if you were to ask those people where they're being led to, they're going to tell you they're being led to a very dark place. And I think we really need a different conceptualization of how we go forward. And COVID has been a disaster, but it's also maybe shown us that we're not as great as we think we are, and that maybe having one person in government, whether he or she is the president, is not enough. We need a whole institution to change and to have the best type of people there.
COVID's going to change a lot more than the way we do business, that's for sure. TK Pooe, always a pleasure. Page 8 of the Sunday Independent is the article we were talking about. TK Pooe writing, "New thinking is needed," in today's Sunday Independent.